I had an experience once which sort of pulled it all together for me. I was volunteering at the hospital in Austin. That's what I do when I want to feel good. It's very interesting. People say, why would you want to go to a hospital where there are terminally ill children? I wouldn't want to go near there. Well, hospitals and orphanages are my happy place because it makes me realize so often that I'm a very lucky and blessed person. But I happened to be sitting with a young guy named Victor one day. I think Victor was around 14 years old, and we were sitting and having chat about life. And he turns around to me and he says to me, what's going to happen when I die? And I was about to answer him when his mother jumped off the chair, ran over to the bed and said, you are not going to die. We have spent $375,000 to keep you alive. You will not die. And he's like, well. So, he shrugs his shoulders and I shrug my shoulders. Well, his mom left the room about 10 minutes later. And I said to him, Victor, we're all going to die. I'm going to die. You're going to die one day. He said, I know, I'm not stupid. I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, so what do you think happens when you die? I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that we go to a really nice place. Some people call it heaven, some people call it nirvana. I don't know, but I believe I'm going to go somewhere. He goes, yeah, me too. I said, okay, cool. He said, but how do you know where to go when you get there? I said, what do you mean? He goes, do they give you a map or something? I said, that's a really good question. He said, well, I'm really nervous because, there's millions of people up there. How would I know where to go? I said, hang on a minute. And something clicked in my brain to be able to come up with this concept. But I said, I'll tell you what. I took out my journal and I drew a picture of my grandfather. My grandfather was a great guy and a lovely man, and he probably still is somewhere, just a wonderful man. And when he passed away, there was, obviously a huge gap in our lives. But I said to him, here's a picture of my grandfather, and I gave him the picture. And I said, if you pass away from this disease, if you do, when you get to heaven, ask for my grandfather. His name is Ted. He'll get you checked in. He'll get you a good room. He is a great guy. And he takes the picture of my grandfather and he goes, thanks. I'll tell him you said hi when I see him. I said, yeah, please do. So he took that picture and he stuck it on his little bulletin board next to his bed. And every day when I walked in there, I teased him about something and he would say, I'm going to tell your grandpa when I see him, okay? And I'm like, no, don't tell him. He's a ghost. He can come and spook me. And he said, oh, now I'm really going to tell him. Well, unfortunately, he passed away a number of months later, and his parents asked me to deliver the eulogy at the church. And I did so. And I decided I was going to do a stand-up comedy routine instead of just doing a regular eulogy, because that's what he would have wanted. He liked my jokes. He thought I was silly, and I decided to do that. So I went along to the church, and unfortunately for me, it was an open casket ceremony. Now, where I come from in South Africa, they don't have viewing, and especially of a child. So I didn't look in the coffin. I walked around the side. I scooted around, went and sat in the pew. And the priest came up and he delivered the sermon. And then he asked me if I would come and deliver the eulogy. And I got up and I started talking about Victor and all the crazy things he did. Like the one time he took his urine sample container and he poured apple juice into it. And when the nurse came along, she said, give me your urine sample. And he picked it up and he opened it. And then he drank it. And he said, well, I better pass it through again. And of course, the nurse is like, oh, my goodness, are you insane? Are you mad? And he thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And so I'm saying this and everybody's laughing in the church. And they are just remembering him with just such humor. And it was great. And what happened was I didn't look at the coffin. I didn't want to remember that little boy lying in the coffin. So I didn't even look there. So on the way back, I'm walking by and I turned and lo and behold, I looked in the coffin. And there he was lying in there with his hands on his chest. He was bald from the chemotherapy. He had a black tuxedo on with a red bow tie. In his coffin were all his toys from when he was a little boy. His baseball kit, his cards, his Legos, flowers, that thing was packed. And he was lying there. And in his hand, he was holding that picture of my grandfather. And his mom said to me, you know what, you did more for my child than $375,000. And I thought about that afterwards, and I thought I didn't really do anything for that little boy except validate what he was feeling and to listen to his questions instead of me telling him what I thought he needed to hear, which his mother kept on telling him he wasn't going to die. He knew he was. And to be able to hear him made me realize that sometimes we can very simply use little tools to connect with kids in the most difficult of situations. And that was a huge lesson for me in terms of trying to find ways to connect with kids. And sometimes traditional ways don't happen, especially when our egos get involved. And so that's how I sort of started working with connections and figuring out ways to do it.